I did not sit down to watch Heated Rivalry expecting to feel anything. This was supposed to be background television, chewing gum for the brain, a silly little show about horny hockey players. Instead, it emotionally destroyed me.
Вот в чем вся хрень.
And that's why I need to talk about it. It was honestly kind of impossible not to discover Heated Rivalry because suddenly everyone was talking about it. But my personal point of entry was extremely on brand for me. I was on Tumblr, as one does, when I stumbled across an old photo shoot of Connor Storrie, and I swear to God, he looked like Lestat from the books in his rockstar era. I froze and stared. I immediately thought, who is this man and why does he look like my favorite vampire has just walked off from the pages from my favorite books? So I did what any reasonable person would do. I started digging, and well, here we are. Then came the second thing that sealed my fate. I learned that the first book in the Game Changer series was originally a Stucky fanfiction. And listen, as a Stucky fangirl forever and ever, that information did irreversible damage to my free will. I started watching the show half ironically, mostly because I was exhausted. At the time, I was watching a lot of classics for my film criticism course, and don't get me wrong, I love Fellini, I really do. But sometimes your brain doesn't want a Fellini. Sometimes it wants something light and easy, something that feels like visual junk food. So I put on this silly little hockey show in the background. Little did I know that by the end, I would be staring at my screen like, why am I invested? When did this happen? At first, I wasn't even really watching the show. It was just on, but within the first few minutes, something felt off in a good way. Because this show was way more competent and cinematic than I expected it to be. And it had any right to be, by the way. Yes, the budget is noticeably small, but instead of fighting that, the show works with it. It finds angles, compositions, and visual tricks that make everything feel bigger than it actually is. Honestly, I think the smaller budget is part of why the show looks so good. It feels like they were actively overcompensating for it with taste and style. Like, we don't have money, so we're going to have ideas. The first thing that really jumped out at me was the lighting. Oh my God, someone actually hired a gaffer. All jokes aside, shots that needed to be lit were lit, shots that didn't were allowed to fall into shadow. There is contrast and shape, there is intention. In our current visual culture of contrastless beige slop, this show looked good because it's not afraid of darkness. It's not afraid to let things be moody, and that alone already gives it a cinematic feel. Then I started noticing the blocking and the camera movement, which is not something I expected from a TV romance drama. There are prolonged single takes that completely mesmerized me. They create this illusion that you're in the room with the characters because there are no cuts. You're just there watching, not blinking. It's such a bold choice and it makes everything feel more intense, more intimate, and yes, more real. But the thing that surprised me the most was the writing. Because what I did not expect from a spicy fanfic adjacent book adaptation was this level of emotional depth. Now, let me be very clear. I love fanfiction. I'm an avid reader. Fanfic has value, it has creativity, and boy, does it have community. But I do think that the fanfictionization of modern literature can be limiting. It often prioritizes tropes, safety, and familiarity over risk, provocation, and actually saying something. Fanfiction is comforting, it's escapist, and it's a great snack, but I don't think it's sustainable as a steady diet. And this is not me dissing the book series, I'm reading it right now, but the first book, the Stucky fanfic one, is exactly that. It's a snack, not a full meal. Which is why I think it's so interesting that Jacob Tierney, the showrunner, chose to focus on a different book and different characters. Because Shane and Ilya give us more. This isn't just a forbidden love story or we'll change the system with the power of our love story. This is a character study, fundamentally. A deeply messy, emotionally repressed, and sexually charged character study with tons of smut, obviously. Which brings me to the sex. Let's be honest, the marketing hook is obvious. It's a horny gay hockey show. But once again, there is a surprise, a twist to it. The sex isn't just there to be, well, sexy. As Jacob Tierney said, sex is character development. It's not random, it's communicative. For Shane and Ilya, sex is the only language they have at the beginning. They don't know how to talk, how to communicate. They don't know how to be vulnerable with each other. So they fuck. That's why the show focuses on them. Scott and Kip's story is sweeter, clearer, more rom-commy, and that's lovely. But it's not as volatile or transgressive. And now we need to talk about the Russian side of things. Because I have to be honest, one of the hooks for me was Ilya being Russian. And let me start with saying that I am deeply used to the Russian language being creatively interpreted in Western media. And by that I mean that it's usually the only time I, a Russian person, need subtitles to understand the characters. So imagine my shock when Connor Storrie opened his beautiful mouth and I actually understood him. I immediately Googled his background and found out he had 2 weeks to learn those lines. 2 weeks! That's an incredible ear for language, truly. And while, yes, he has an accent that's expected, this is still some of the best Russian I've heard from an American actor. I also love the little colloquialism, little things like «не-а» instead of «нет».
Ты с кем-то сейчас встречаешься?
Не.
And I especially loved how his voice drops an octave. Every actor asked to do a Russian accent does that, and it works every time. What Connor did here is kind of insane. Not only does he deliver believable, slightly accented Russian throughout the whole series, he delivers a 4-minute monologue entirely in Russian with an emotional gut punch that absolutely lands. That's not just good for an American actor, that's talent, full stop. And now putting on my English teacher hat for a second, I do have notes from personal experience. Russian speakers who reach Ilya's level of fluency usually don't retain such a thick accent, especially if they live in an English-speaking country. Is it impossible for him to have such an accent? No. Is it unlikely? A little. As a small side note, and this isn't about the accent, some lines of dialogue in this and previous episodes did sound a bit clunky, almost like direct calques from English. They didn't always feel fully natural to my native speaker ear, but again, that's a writing issue, not a performance one. And finally, I really need to say this. It means so much to me to see a Russian bisexual character front and center, to see a show that doesn't fall into what we call klukva, that comically exaggerated, cartoonish stereotype of Russianness. Yes, there is vodka and gloom, but it's handled with care and texture and with respect to the character's background. And the fact that this show completely breached containment even here in Russia, that it became viral enough for me to see people who would normally never engage with this kind of content watching it, praising it, falling in love with it, that's absolutely amazing. That's priceless. So why am I obsessed with Heated Rivalry? Because it tricked me. It looked like something disposable and turned out to be something precious. It sold itself as horny escapism and delivered emotional devastation. It had every excuse to be mediocre and chose not to be. This is a show that understands that desire is narrative, that sex can be language, and that love stories are most interesting when the characters don't know how to love yet. And maybe that's why it hit me so hard, because sometimes the things we expect least from end up saying the most.
Okej, ända.